Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. People won't know this, or a lot of people won't know, because it was brand new news to me when I sat with Russ Godin a number of years ago, and we were talking about different organisations, NGOs, and who apply, let's say, for this funding when things happen, when things are needed. The government needs a skill set. Now, there's many advantages to utilising the fire and rescue service through mechanisms like National Resilience and UK ISAR, but it isn't the only option. Could you just familiarise us, give us an elevator pitch of how that works for people that don't understand? Because there's a lot of stuff. There's the Fire Aid, there's SERA, there's loads that I don't know of. You know, that's just a couple that I could think off the top of my head. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
Yeah, there's a load of NGOs. There's a load of people on a register, you know, that can offer assistance, from small NGOs up to the big clusters. So these are kind of UN-backed huge charities that move in and do the recovery phase after a disaster. And it's scalable. It's scalable from NGOs who exist really by effectively raising money locally, rattling tins outside the supermarket to fund their own deployment stuff. And then, you know, and they're not as kind of restricted as the UK Fire Service. They're quite independent.
Yeah, I did a little bit of work with React.
Yeah.
I've met a few of them individuals. Some of them are great, some ex-military again, and they seem to be able to get to places faster because they don't have to wait for green lights. They're not as sometimes, careful what I say, they're not as well equipped or well trained at times. There's a lot of members of the public that just work for them, which is great. But again, give us a sales pitch as to why the fire and rescue service is a better option, perhaps at times, or just give us the devil's advocate of both sides, maybe.
Yeah, so you know, having worked with these people overseas as well, it's I think what sets us apart is we're a classified team. So the United Nations International Search and Rescue Advisory Group, INSARAG, classify us as a heavy rescue team. We've got medium, now we've got light, which some of the NGOs, one's already been successful in gaining. And that gives us a bit of, we're a known entity then. Our skill set has been assessed and meets a required standard. Our whole mobilisation protocol's been assessed. Things like inoculations, the right documentation, the manifests, and we're self-sufficient. What I've found in the past with some of the NGOs, and not all of them by any stretch, but some of the NGOs, they have money in the bank, they can get themselves over to a disaster area, but they're not self-sufficient. They go there effectively with their hand out saying, can you accommodate us? Can you feed us? And
they become a disaster tourist, and they can become a bloody victim sometimes. And then the UK government has to find a way to get them back and rescue them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they become a burden on the affected country. You know, the last thing the affected country needs is people coming with their hand out. And we've had examples, and Nepal was one. You know, the number of teams that went to Nepal was, you know, in the hundreds. And it was a bit of a free-for-all, really, uncoordinated. Some teams didn't link into the coordination system, so you didn't know what they were up to, where they were operating, what successes they'd had. Compared to Japan, who were very strict with their host nation support arrangements, saying, unless you've got that blue badge on your arm, you're not coming in. which upset a lot of British NGOs that got to the country and were turned away. And they may not have the money to come home. They won't have arrangements to come home. That's why they ask if they can come into our aircraft all the time. But that's the difference. I'll give you an example. When we were in Nepal, coordination had kind of just got going. 2015, magnitude 8 earthquake in Nepal, Kathmandu, a lot of damage in the capital. And once coordination had got going, we were sent to a building that was. They said it's carnage down there. Someone's had a look at it. There's dead bodies everywhere, and it needs searching. Can you go down there? Yeah, of course we can. When we arrived, there were 2 NGOs on the site. We scrolled. There's body parts everywhere. There's flies. It's horrendous, right? So when we got there, within probably 5 minutes, I'd met with the chief of police. I'd met with the building owner and I think the local mayor, right? And found out that actually it was a meat market. So that was all animal flesh that was everywhere, right? There were 3 dead people in there that had been located and identified, and everyone else had been accounted for. So there's kind of like no work for us here. It's done. The job is done. It's a recovery job now, and we're still in rescue at the minute. However, the NGOs that were there at the time were taking photos of each other, right, working on this site. And there must have been, I've got a great photo of it, there must have been, 2,000 people crowded around watching this. This is the entertainment. There's no telly. Yeah. Comms are down. So this is the entertainment. And we just said, right, we're out of here now. We're out because they were, the dog might have a hit, all of this kind of stuff. Where it was absolutely local intelligence, no, 3 people, there and there, found, done, let's go. And I think that's the difference, really. And we turned up at sites where they said no one's been there, and there's kind of medical gloves on the floor, or packaging and moody building markings, none of which have been ever passed on through the coordination sort of structure. So you duplicate an effort, that's the downside of it.
That sort of self-deploying aspect. I think that's one thing that the UK Fire and Rescue Service globally has been recognised for in many different capacities. Policies and procedures are very good at writing those, but also command and control. We're very good at that. We're very organised. And even when we go back down to the micro levels of JESIPs and things like that, we've got people. And we're good at organising stuff, at getting ourselves together. We're good at following instructions. I think that's sometimes why we get sometimes described as, sometimes for better and worse, as like that paramilitary aspect to it. Because and I don't want us to lose that bit, to be honest. Like, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater when people say about how bad that is and it's toxic and it's this and it's that. But no, I do need you to do what I've asked you to do, Dave, when I asked you to do it. I'm trying to create a sphere of control. I'm trying to put a big bubble of safety around this area of disaster. And in order for that to be safe, you are one of my walking, talking props inside this thing. So you do need to do what I ask you to do in the way that I ask you to do it. It's not a democracy at that moment in time. We can talk about the planning and the democracy later and debrief it. And even beforehand, we can discuss approaches. When we're there, I do need you to do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. And that's not a conversation as such. I may voice it as a question. Yeah. It's not a question. I'm telling you to go and do that.
I mean, absolutely. And we are on the world stage when we deploy. Yeah. Let's not get into the personal relationship stuff. We're under a microscope here, and we are flying a flag for the UK. So we have to keep all of that in mind in all of our actions. So any of the freelancing, and we're still seeing it now, but it has come a long way. I know one of the pre-questions you asked is about what changes have we seen to ISAR in my time. And we London Fire Brigade and Merseyside joined ISAR in 2012. So Ron Dobson...
Is that all it's been?
Yeah.
I thought it was longer than that. Wow.
Ron Dobson and Dan Stevens basically muscled their way into ISAR, right? So there's me pestering Ron for quite a few years that we've got to get involved. And anything Ron did, Dan did, sort of thing. So so that's why we joined it. And Pete Crook was running the team then from Hampshire. And I knew Pete, from the New Dimension times. I liked Pete, but he made no bones about the fact he did not want us in his team. And it was his team at that time. So once we did our team selection.
Why? Because you're the big behemoths that are going to muscle in and take over it.
That was
which is a little bit what did happen with Merseyside.
Well,
Merseyside took over it,
and that's why I took a different approach. I said to the team, we're not going to do that. We're going to come in subtly. No. We're going to start picking up rubbish. We're going to start doing whatever it is, and we're going to slowly work our way through this. We ain't going in big and bold. But Pete came to do our kind of induction once we'd selected the team, and his opening line was, "My name's Pete Crook, and before we start, I just wanted to know, I don't want you in ISAR. However, you are in, and so I'm going to pass on what you need to know." So, that's got everyone going, nice, thanks for the welcome. We're,
a bit of a dick move.
So it was very much a club. I've got to say, that was a feeling of it. When we first went into it, it was very much a club. And that was exposed when Sean Moore came in and started that formalisation process. Just starting with things like team insurance. What that exposed is some services didn't even know they were in it. They didn't even know their members were part of the team.
Wow.
And it was all kept under the radar. And this was their first steps.
You'd be furious as a chief fire officer if that was the case, wouldn't it? Because, like you say, if your person gets hurt, injured, blah, blah, you'd be absolutely furious. Not because you don't want them to do it.
Yeah.
Just freaking tell me about it. Tell me, what's this secret super squirrel shake your hand gang club?
And people were taking leave. They were getting their shifts covered, so they were under the radar. There was none of this formal deployment. And you could, when Sean started this formalisation process of documentation, insurance, kind of matching us towards the national resilience structure of the NUG, National User Group, National Working Group. ISAR had its own national working group, which is the senior group, if you like. But these were not senior people. These were people who have been in ISAR for a long time. And they were setting the strategic direction of the team. Right. And then when Sean said, no, we're going to mirror what happens with the other capabilities, we're going to have a principal officer level representation at national working group level, and you all can fall back to, the user group or whatever. And that caused a real stir. There were some people that bit back about, whereas I, from the outside, new to it, I thought that was the best thing that could possibly happen, because we're inviting all these people that had complained about not being supported by their service, not being supported by their principal officers. Well, guess what? Let's bring them in then, and then you'll get that level of support. I could, and it was obvious why people were against it, because they knew the support wasn't there, and all of a sudden they were going to be exposed.
So did people think that trying to professionalise it, trying to bring it into and align to national standards would ruin the specialness or ruin the old boys club that we had going? Or
I think it would.
Some of that still exists. Like some people, when you talk about selection now, like we're about to run another selection. In fact, this month it's the 1st of Feb, isn't it?
Yeah.
People still think there's some nepotism and there's a lot of that in there. I don't see any of it anymore. I don't even think I saw it when I first joined, to be honest. No, I didn't, because I've only been doing it, whatever, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I never saw any of that, but I heard a lot about it. But yeah. I think that's just some people talking about stuff that's 15 years old now, or 10 years old.
I think so, yeah, and those stories live on, don't they? But our greatest strength, I think, as a team is having that independent selection process where you haven't got anyone from your own service marking your performance.
Yeah. Right? Don't mark your own homework.
We could never.
Oh, he's my mate, I'll get him in.
Yeah.
Well, you won't, because that's not how it works.
we could never get away with running that type of selection process if it was London doing it. So our greatest strength, I think, is, and that common bond that everyone's got, that they've been through that process, gives everyone a bit of credibility, right? So coming in any other way, I think you lose that credibility. You know, it's not particularly hard, is it? You just got to adjust to it. You know, it's and everything's done for a reason. So when you get well, that was ridiculous, that wouldn't happen. Well, actually, guess what? It happened here, here, and here. And we do that because of this. And so when you can tag everything back to a real life experience, it gives it even more credibility. You know, right, truck's broken down, you've got to push it for a mile. You know, wow, guess what? You're doing it, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's our strength. And I know there's talk about going back out to doing local selection processes, but I think that would be a bad move.
That would be a terrible move. And I think what Martin's got going on, and I know it's not just Martin Fran and the team, they do it so well.
It's brilliant.
It's really, really well done. Great locations as well, really great setup, great professionalism, organisation, the variety of scenarios, so realistic and takes people so outside of their comfort zones. I sincerely hope we continue to do a model of that. I've always wished Martin would do more of a role, and I know we won't talk long here because it's not for us to cast our judgment on Martin's career and stuff like that, but I'm like, he's so great. I love that bloke. I just hope I just want him to do more. I wish he did a senior leadership role with it. But anyway, I digress.
Well, I think he wants to, but So I having that foundation, I think, for our team, people fail it. So this is not an attendance process. People either deselect or select themselves to withdraw, or they fail.
Yeah.
And other people who don't actually complete pass, right?
Yeah.
And it's because they've shown the right attributes. Your technical skill level is not what's being tested here. That should have been done in your pre-selection stuff. You're here because there's no doubt about your technical ability, right? Hopefully. And this is now to look at your personal qualities and attributes and whether you've got what it takes to be a part of that team.
That's the bit, isn't it? Those personal characteristics. How where does your fuckum line? When do you get the fuckums? When do you get the? Oh, you know what? No, are you the first one to start supporting members of the team, sharing the load, helping with the nav, not getting frustrated when everyone makes a mistake because everyone makes a mistake.
Yeah.
That mental resiliency, that ability to demonstrate and deploy empathy in the right moments, and all of those. Yeah, non-technical aspects. Some people think, I'm an amazing USAR technician. I'm going to smash the shit out of this. Yeah. Well, you're conditioned to work in a normal 12-hour shift and only being at a job for maximum of 4 hours and asking for your reliefs and blah, blah, blah. You're probably not going to be ideal for it. And then when they do fail it, that's when they scream nepotism because they go, I'm the best person for the job, and they didn't take it. Sally got in, didn't she? Yeah, well, Sally's got a bit more empathy. She's a really good team player. Yeah, she's she's got skill sets you haven't wanted to develop because you've just relied on, I'm technically brilliant. Well, that's not what we're really looking for. I can train anybody. Training a skill set, you can do that 4, 5, 6 months. Training a mindset is a very different thing, isn't it?
And it's got to be natural, isn't it? I mean, it's only 2 days, isn't it? Or 2 and a bit days. So, and people even lose sight of that, don't they? Even in that short time. This isn't you haven't got to keep, we're asking you to keep this up for 2 weeks or longer. If you can't do it for 2 days, guess what? You're definitely not what we're looking for. And you've got your classic DS watchers as well, haven't you? Because the directing staff are watching the team long before they approach them. And then you see certain people kick into action when they see someone walking towards them, start shouting orders out and this stuff. Too late, pal, And I've asked, so all the time we've been involved in this, right, I've asked for warts and all feedback. And I said, so be careful what you write on those forms because they're going straight to the individual. Right? Because, some of the people that volunteered to be directing staff were not very diplomatic in some of their comments, and me just saying waste of rations or never in a million years isn't particularly helpful to develop someone. So if we're going to be a little bit more constructive with your criticism. But I did. I shared everything.
Yeah.
And it upset people. And I said, that's not true. I said, listen, I can only go by. But when all of these people are saying it about you, guess what? It probably is true.
And the beauty of it is these people don't even know you.
No, exactly.
So they have no vested interest either way. They're not like, oh, it's not their opportunity to go, I've never liked Dave. This is my opportunity to stick it to him. They don't fucking know you.
That's why
and if you don't pass, they're not going to see you again. Maybe ever. Unless it's a massive international job or whatever. They're probably never going to see you again. It's just, no, I don't know that bloke, but he was really selfish. Never looked after anybody else. No consideration for anyone. Great personal admin, but terrible team player, or whatever.
And we've had other people who've been so busy sorting everyone else out, making sure everyone else is fed and watered, neglected themselves actually, and then became a victim. And you're going,
they'll become a liability.
Right, so okay, you're a great team player, but we're going to lose you, So, and then everyone that gets
setting yourself on fire to keep everyone else warm. That's what I always think about it.
Being a martyr, but everyone who comes through, our process or London's process, they get the briefing when they're in that this is a privilege, not a right. Your place on this team is not secure. All right, don't think just because you've done that now you can do what you want. That's not how it is. This is organic. This team is organic. If you're not cutting the mustard, you're off the team. I don't owe you a place on this team. It's an absolute privilege to be, and that's how I felt as a team leader. That's how I felt. It was an absolute privilege. It wasn't my right. It was, it was an absolute privilege to hold that position, as it should be from the newest member of the team, holding that position. And people shouldn't lose sight of that, because they are, if you think about it as sports, these are caps. You're representing your country here. You're playing an international here. There's no given that you're on the team. And if we can keep people on their toes, we can keep the professionalism high.
In other news, this episode is brought to you in partnership with MSA Safety. Today we have them to thank for the improved firefighter safety through connectivity in their brand new connected firefighter system. At the centre of the connected firefighter platform is the MSA M1 SCBA with telemetry. That integrates straight in with the Luna system, which is a wireless all-in-one device creating an independent search and rescue network, providing edge detection, enhanced personal thermal imaging, while simplifying post-scene reporting and data retention. All of this then plugs into the FireGrid system for cloud-based connectivity, real-time information, and data-driven decisions for the incident commander. MSA are truly taking massive strides in the future of improved firefighter safety through connectivity in the brand new MSA Connected Firefighter platform. Now back to the show. Can I ask you a slightly provocative question, and feel free, we can edit this out if required. Scottish team do some different physical standard stuff for their team members. John and a few of the other members, they have their bleep tests and all this sort of jazz. And I've seen and heard and experienced a small amount myself. When you're out there is a lot of grunt work to be done. Even just setting up the booth sometimes is a lot of grunt work. It's a lot of tense. It's a lot of faff. There's no additional level of physical standard required for a ISAR operator. I think that's a mistake, personally. What's your experiences and thoughts? Because if you can't carry it, you can't take it with you. It's that, when you're out deployed in these areas and you're marching for like Turkey, the most recent one for them, a lot of the guys and girls, you'd be walking for a long ass time with a lot of bags, and the kit you want to use, you've got to take it with you. And again, talking about that becoming a liability aspect, when we did some training over in Kosovo and stuff, people coming down with heat stress, people having issues with their own body. I know I'm a romantic with that, and it's just a Pete thing. It's not just a Pete thing, but like the UK Fire and Rescue Service fitness standards, UK ISAR, I think we should be morals, values, principles, skill level, personal admin, fitness level. We should be a bit more tip of the sword on all of them, and I think we are in most capacities other than physical fitness. I think we should be a bit more on that. Feel free to tell me, you're wrong, BS, whatever.
sit on the fence really. I think Turkey caught some people out. Turkey caught some people out with their personal fitness lessons, and I think as a service in London Fire Brigade, we're looking at different standards for our rescue technicians, which includes an aptitude to work at height, a swim test, this kind of stuff. When we introduced Swiftwater Rescue, believe it or not, we were told we could not introduce a swim test.
I know, and most services still don't do one, and I think that is absolutely obscene.
I mean, who do you want rescuing you? You know, the fact you've got this PPE on, and if you flap a bit, you're going to move along the surface of the water. But we sort of did it by stealth. You know, it was like, right, jump in, everyone. If you go over the other side there, over by that bridge, and I'll be over there in a minute. So you've already done it. You know. So, but it's ridiculous to tell people that we can't have these standards. So we're looking, and especially now with a 40-year careers. If we don't get a really high standard of fitness at the start of the career, where you're going to be 20, 30 years, 40 years down the line, you know, starting strong should...
I mean, you've retired, you're still fully mobile, you're still fit and healthy, you've made it to the end with all your faculties and your mobility, but I'd argue you're one of the rare ones, you know, and, you know, whilst I think that's just been a personal discipline, I don't know if some of that's come from the military... I don't think it was ever a direct focus for you. You never banged on about it to me.
No,
but there's probably always been a minimum line that you're like, I'm not getting... Was that just a personal values thing for you? Or
I think it'd be exposed on that selection part. You know, this is, again, back to that privilege thing and staying in the team, isn't it? So I think that gets exposed, I think, on the selection process. Just walking up a few hills with a railway sleeper on your shoulder is enough to say some of the stuff you've got to do is a bit... Balls ache, it is. We're carrying lumping some heavy stuff around over long duration. We are, and you know, and you share it out as a team, and you are a team member, not an individual. But I think it's exposed there really, and then it's down to the kind of personal discipline once they're in the team to maintain that. And of course, the trouble is, and we've suffered from it, is people who are in the team a long time get promoted. And they get more sedentary roles, and they become station commanders, whatever, you know, and they're stuck behind a desk, and their diaries are chock-a-block full, and it's harder. Whereas the firefighters have got a time in every shift to go and train. Right, it's really strict in London now. You have got training time every single shift. No excuses, you know. Officers don't have that luxury. So we're asking a bit more from them to maintain their personal fitness.
It is a weird one, and we'll not spend any more time on it. But yeah, it's a small part of the role that can accidentally become a big part if you don't just at least have that minimum standard for yourself. So take us on from full setup, all bells and whistles are running. As you were coming, how far would you be now? You're probably 10, 15 years into your career, seeing that you'd made a real difference with this, seeing nationally where rescue standards were at. Over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, you've been coming towards the end of your career. You got an MBE. Many congratulations. Thank you for your service. Talk to us about getting an MBE. The team here at the podcast are extremely excited to announce our brand new partnership with Patrol Store UK. Patrol Store has been serving the UK's police, fire and emergency communities and first responder sector since 2008, providing leading brands such as Hikes, Magnum, 511, Nebo, OpZulu, Highlander, AKU and many, many more of our favourites. They are now also supplying bespoke uniform, PPE and station workwear to fire services around the UK. So for all our listeners that are part of your USAR, your HEART team, your ISAR team, your armed response teams, your fire investigation, your NALO, your hazmat and all of the training departments that have got your own budgets, be sure to get the absolute best for your team at a realistic price by contacting Aaron and the team at Patrol Store and referencing the Firefighters podcast. Patrol Store will also be taking part in our listener competition giveaways as well as providing unique discounts to podcast listeners. So for people that are always asking about Hikes boots as an example, that is one unique discount code that is coming to you very soon through Patrol Store. We've also got some incredible bags. I mean, the OpZulu bags are a game changer. So you know the really Gucci and expensive tactical black bags that everyone's using in CrossFit workouts and taking to the gym and taking to stations? Well, they've basically got that, but it's made better and costs less, because they're not slapping some Gucci expensive brand name on it and it's giving you what you want on a first responder salary. Be sure to keep your eyes in the notes of the episodes for links to unique offers and discount codes. And if you're looking to buy well and buy once, be sure to get in the notes and head over to Patrol Store UK. Now back to the show.
I got an MBE during the COVID. So again, another right place, right time kind of bit of luck, really. I got called up to see the commissioner and the DEP right at the start of the pandemic, literally, because London was the epicentre, wasn't it, for the UK? So we had to act quickly, really. And I was asked to define the medical standards of our immediate emergency care crews, so the first aid standards of our firefighters, effectively, and how that maps across to see whether we could assist with the ambulance service.
Ooh.
So that
sticky thing that is for unions and everyone and co-responding and blah 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 blah. I'd have said but that's just, I'm a moron that doesn't know anything. A lot of people want to help, but it's whether or not it's our job, isn't it?
But this was just a scoping bit at the time. Is it? Can we help? Is there something we can do? And there is a kind of direct comparison to one of the ambulance roles, and so I said, absolutely, we can do that, and we can help. Give it to me. We can do this. We can do it. And then literally the next day, it was, right, something else has come up now. This PMART team, this pandemic multi-agency response team, was being discussed and scoped out. And that would be a team of police, fire, potentially, and ambulance service that responded to COVID-related deaths in the home, to take the burden off of local coroner, the undertakers and the police generally. And so I've now got these two ideas, right, to run with. And I was, again, able to convene a team, a great team, to scope out how we can make this work. And, it was a real team effort. We came up with it really quickly, started the risk assessment process, and put it out to advert, because things were moving at a real pace. I'd just been away, actually, and I'd picked up COVID at those early stages, and I was absolutely suffering with it, raging headaches, and I thought my eyes were going to pop out my head, and I've got the commissioner on the phone at midnight asking me stuff. I need this turned around in the next 10 minutes. It was non-stop.
Jesus.
But then, but getting it off the ground, getting the team together, getting an area in headquarters where we could operate, and getting this thing up and running was an amazing opportunity. There's no doubt about it. And it re-inspired my faith in the fire service, because in those early times, none of us knew the potential of COVID. None of us knew where this was going. And yet we still had a lot of people put their hand up to either drive ambulances. So they were kind of supposed to be driving the ambulances and carrying the bags and assisting. I mean, some went way beyond that, depending on their relationship with their paramedic. They were delivering babies and all sorts, So
I know.
We won't talk
There's
about
some great
that.
stories. I've had a couple of them on. But that's the firefighter in them. They want to help. They're just like, get involved, don't they?
But
it's good.
Not, it resembles so much the whole 9/11 thing, doesn't it? We got this massive disaster, and we're going to kick into action because that's what we do, And these new generation of firefighters who had missed the 9/11 thing were like, now this is my turn to do something. It's my turn to help the London and the country, and especially on the PMART side, there were some horrendous stories about the recoveries that had to be done, and the hubs that we set up on police stations. You had police officers refusing to engage with them or talk to them or let them use their facilities, because they were contagious. This stuff that was going on, and so that first wave,
there was just so much fear, wasn't there? People were very scared. People they had families, like their partner was not well or they had kids. People were just feared as a funny old thing to people,
Yes, and I think the first wave of people that kicked in, had my real admiration, because they were taking an absolute unknown risk. They were doing it all for the right reasons. As the programme went on and became national, there was a financial incentive and all this other stuff, and then it was kind of not so much. Murky. But that first wave of people who threw their hand up with no financial incentive, just to do the right thing, were fantastic. And I wanted to recognise. I put in for 5 BEMs for a representative of those volunteers, one from my own team, and then 4 from the firefighters that responded, who we had evidence back from their multi-agency partners of how fantastic they were, and very different things from their actual physical response skills and standards through to being shoved in an old store at the back of a police station and going in off duty and painting it and decorating it and making it nice environment for the others to be in, So, and of those 5 nominations, I managed to get 3 BMs. And as that was happening, our chief had done the same for me. And whilst it rolled out nationally and we shared all of our risk assessments and everything nationally, and Phil Garrigan got my OBE, but he took the credit for the national rollout. But it came from London.
Mate, that's an incredible thing to be proud of. And like I say, everyone's an expert in retrospect, but it takes a real just audaciousness, confidence, self-belief, desire to make a difference, to try and do the right thing, to really put your head above the parapet when no one has the answers, no one knows the obvious path forward. That's what's different to me. It takes real confidence and a real difference of character. But
it's knowing the strength of the people around you as well. That whole leadership thing. It's and I really get this feeling in ISAR. We do a lot of capacity building work with the London team. We go out and do our own kind of thing. And I get this overwhelming feeling as there's nothing that we can't achieve, and to have that feeling where you've got a team and the answer is yes, what's the question? The answer is yes, what's the question? And that's how that whole PMART and ADA, the Ambulance Driver Assist program, started. Dave, do you think there's anything we can... Yes. The answer is yes. Leave it with me and I'll work it up. Absolutely.
I love that.
And when you haven't got...
The answer's yes. What's the question? I'm writing that down.
When you've got open doors, you can achieve anything. And when you've got skill sets around you, you're surrounded by good people, there's literally nothing that you can't achieve. And I've been privileged enough to have that experience a lot of times, particularly with ISAR. But it was on that occasion of the Ambulance Driver Assist and the PMART stuff, is just people stepping up to the plate. Where do you want me? What do you want me to do? If the service was like that across the board.
Ever heard the quote that true leaders are readers? Well, we believe this is true. Listeners often ask where we go to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the sector globally. So there are a few key publications which I encourage you to go check out. Now, if you're looking for insights on disaster management, fire protection and firefighting, for us, we go to Asia Pacific Fire Magazine. And when you're looking for the latest on the Middle East fire protection industry and fire services, it's Gulf Fire Magazine. And our quarterly check-in is with International Firefighter Magazine, reporting to municipal, industrial and fire training professionals. Now, next up, and widely accepted to be the global voice for passive and active fire protection, this is a good one. It's International Fire Protection Magazine. And finally, and perhaps the most relevant to our predominantly UK audience, I'd strongly suggest subscribing to UK Fire Magazine, reporting to the United Kingdom fire protection industry and fire services. We're really excited to announce that after a long-standing relationship and mutual respect, we've now partnered with MDM Publishing, who bring you all of these essential publications. Because in a world of change, the learners shall inherit the earth, while the learned shall find themselves perfectly suited for a world that no longer exists. Eric Hoffer said that, and I believe he was right. So keep growing, keep learning, and keep yourself in the know and at the cutting edge of what's happening globally by dropping into the notes. And as a gift from the podcast, you can actually subscribe to any of these publications for free using the link in our notes. Now back to the show. You said there about the answer is yes, what's the question? And you said about it not always being the case across the mindsets of people. You've had a long career in the fire and rescue service. How have you sustained your optimism? How have you sustained that playfulness? I think there's a lot maybe as well, if you could overlay that with an aspect of the value of association, the people that you have chosen to put yourself around and perhaps people you've chosen not to put yourself around, without naming names. How do people remain? I've got a long time left in my career. I want to keep enjoying it as much as I am now. What advice would you have for people about staying that sort of curious individual? I think for me, it's just reminding myself why I joined. Why am I there in the first place?
You know, I presided over quite a few discipline cases and behavioural stuff. And I say to these people off record, you know, have you got children? You got nieces and nephews? Your mates? I bet they're all proud of you in the fire service. In fact, I bet you go and tell everyone down a pub you're in the fire brigade before you tell them you're a painter decorator. You know, whatever it is you've been doing. I said, how do you think they'll feel about this, knowing how you behave? You know, and they squirm and they're embarrassed by it, and so they should be, and that's the point of it. You know, is actually why are you abusing this job I love? And it's back to that feeling privileged. If you remind yourself that you joined to help others, and you joined to have these fantastic opportunities that no one else can have, you know, then that's a motivator in itself, isn't it? And mate, we've all had our knocks, you know, failed promotion processes. You know, we've all had these knocks along the way, and there's too many people that say no. Certainly in my old organisation, it was no, change my mind, you know, and I've never been like that, and I hate it. I hate that. No, especially some experiences of dealing with the unions. It's kind of no, let's work back from there. And you're like, if only the FBU, and this is just my experience of, you know, of certain officers, if they said, absolutely, we can do that. Now let's talk about how much you're going to pay us, what training you're going to give us. You know, wouldn't that be a much more positive way of introducing change?
My gut feel is yes. Help me get over these next few hurdles that I can see in our way.
Yeah, of course we can do that. How much you're going to pay, whatever the motivation is, it's pay, safety, obviously, you know, it's safety first, pay, etc. So, and so I've always had that kind of course we can. I can do anything you want me to do. Either give me some more resources or tell me what you want me to stop so I've got capacity to do it. But absolutely, we'll do anything you want. But it's having those right people around you. Yeah.
You're just reminding me there, actually, about that aspect of capacity and capacity building, because something that we failed to close the loop on earlier. You said that your old organisation did a great deal of that, and it was not only capacity building in terms of relationships with others, but what that did for the team and for their sort of continued motivation of being able to make a difference. Because like you mentioned before we came on today, many people, you know, across UK ISAR, people think we go over and do everything. I've not yet to deploy internationally to support one of these works. I talk about it a lot and the great training that we do. But I know people that have been in it many, many, many years, over a decade, who just miss it each time. Talk to me about capacity building and the benefits you found doing that.
So when London Fire Brigade came into UK ISAR, you know, I was very fortunate that I actually managed to secure a budget for us. So we were able to do a kind of annual training event as well as the normal maintenance of skills stuff. And I was able to organise some fantastic opportunities for the team as a bit of team building, but also to deliver something and do some good. And it was recognising the fact that people may not deploy. At least if I could give them the opportunity to do something meaningful as close to a deployment as possible, then it's all been worthwhile. You know, it makes it all worthwhile, and it keeps them motivated. And everything I've done, and you know, we've done some exotic stuff, don't get me wrong, but everything we've done has been based on an identified lesson. So I designed the cold weather training in Canada. I don't know if you had the chance to do that. So I wrote that up.
No, so we did some of it in Kosovo. A few of our members went to Canada. Bloody amazing, I think.
Yeah, so I was friendly with the Red Deer team for some previous stuff we'd done in Texas and elsewhere. And I designed that course, which was then adopted by UK ISAR. So I designed it for London. And it was for a reason. It was because the team got caught out in Japan because they were freezing cold and they didn't know, you know, and again, it's that forced, that environmental stuff that puts people under pressure. And this is how, like the old heat and humidity training in the fire service, if we can put people in these uncomfortable situations to really test their personal admin, it makes them a more rounded, better, more experienced team member. So we did the cold weather stuff. We did a cave rescue course to see how we were with confined spaces. That was in Slovenia. And after our experiences in Nepal, we did we did some altitude training in Chile. So we did a bit of a exchange of expertise with their USAR team, and then they took us up a mountain to experience extreme altitude, because we had it in Nepal where we were helicoptered out to the kind of foothills of the Himalayas. We're doing needs assessment in villages, wondering why we're blowing out of our arse, and the old boy in flip flops taking you around, just swanning it, and it's because we've been just launched into altitude. And so again, having that experience and knowing how your body reacts is as rewarding as a team, making you a stronger team and a team player. But then taking a team to places like Pakistan, India, Tajikistan, Bhutan to do some real capacity building, where it's as live as it gets. It's as dangerous almost as a deployment might be, but building those quick relations out there where language is a barrier, having that common bond and that culture thing we spoke about, and maximising that actually is so rewarding, especially when we're getting letters we got one from India and Pakistan saying, your training has saved lives. We've just experienced this earthquake. Your training has saved lives. It makes it all worthwhile. It's almost as worthwhile as a deployment. And we've been very fortunate to be able to do that and invite some of the wider ISAR team members on our journeys. But that's the value in it, and it adds to the motivation and that positivity of the team, and it helps to nurture that can-do attitude that gives me the strength as a team leader to say yes. What's the question?
I think John as well. Speaking to John recently from the Scottish team, he's been doing some great work around that in Nepal as well. He was saying they identified one of the many things they've done out there was the amount of helicopter crashes or small minor crashes they have at a lot of these landing sites around Nepal, because they're all covered in ice or they're at altitude or whatever, and putting together like a go bag with the RTC kit, going over and training some of the rescue teams and firefighters out there as a micro example of something they could make a real deal. I don't know how he built that relationship, but he's going out. I think he's out there very soon again, in fact.
He's just come back.
Speaking to me about going out.
He's just come back.
Just come back. Just arranging to go in October or November. I think he's heading back out there to do another thing. Speaking about doing some stuff with him. But anyway, no, there's almost a buffet of global challenges that we can contribute to, places that we can deploy our skills. Because in our own little bubble in the UK, it can be hard to recognise actually how well trained some of our staff are, and how we have so much to offer internationally. I wanted to ask you, when we're talking about maintaining optimism, maintaining confidence, maintaining culture, Grenfell was a very difficult period of time for the whole of the UK Fire and Rescue Service, but certainly, of course, for London Fire Brigade and the challenges that you guys and girls went through. Talk to me about your experiences with that, because a very big part, which became a very small part of the story told, was actually some of the USAR work that went on around Grenfell, which I don't think got a lot of publicity outside of the USAR circles and the skill sets that we saw deployed there. Talk to me about what that experience was like for you.
I was deployed to the fire about 2 a.m. So when it went to a 20 pump fire, I got mobilised as a group manager, and it's quite away from where I live, so it was a bit of a run in. And I hadn't actually seen the fire up to the point where I managed to park and then find the command unit. The fire wasn't visible to me until I kind of turned this corner, and then in front of me is a building of which two sides of an entire tower block are on fire. It is just a shocking sight. It's just something. We've all said it's like something from a movie. We just had never seen. Even then, I'm thinking it must be scaffold netting. It must be, because that's the only thing in my experience I could draw upon to compare it to. So buildings don't burn like that. That's and then going on the unit, and then basically someone saying, "Dave, thank God you're here. I need you to assure us that building's not going to fall over. So I'm making you a senior safety officer
Jesus
go and put
Christ. It's like trying to throw you that hop to potato.
Yeah. So can you go and put some structure around this to make it safe? So there's a brief. So let me just, can I just read that back to you just to make sure I've got it? Make sure the building doesn't fall over and keep everyone safe. Got it. And then going to the actual down to the scene itself, was just, I'd never experienced anything like it. So there's burning debris falling down around us on the floor. There's a sound of this kind of dripping molten metal coming past your ears. And there were firefighters kind of in the way, all bringing people out or running around laying hose out, whatever. And it was just such an incredible sight. And I thought to myself, how can I make this better? Right? So someone said to me a long time ago in a fire, when you go to a fire, we didn't cause the fire. We're there to make it better. So if you can relieve yourself of that burden, actually, it puts you in a much better position to kick in to do what you do. Don't take ownership of the cause of the thing. Make it better. And as you get promoted, you'll scrutinise on how much better you made it. Of course you are. But if you've got that mindset of, right, how can I make this better in this moment, right? And the first thing I did, which sounds ridiculous, but it actually worked. There were firefighters running around this kind of debris field with this burning stuff around them. And we had a bit of hard cover in front of the door. And I went to one of the appliances and I got some tape off, the traffic tape. And I taped an area. I taped a path from the hard cover to the door to start channeling people through the shortest route to try and avoid the kind of debris that was falling, burning debris falling everywhere. And it sounds crazy, right? But firefighters respond to that tape and stuff, you know. And I had this stuff. I'm laying this tape out. I've got my gloves, which are brand new, up here because I'm not going to get them dirty. So they're up here. I've got molten metal landed on my hand, and you sort of thought, well, that hurt a bit, and then you sort of shook my hand, and it's still hurting, and I've got molten metal landed in my hand, right? So I pulled that off. I've finished my job, and I've started directing people and put a spotter there to say, you look up and you give people the go, no go, to just control that access around the debris until we can find another way in. So that was my first action, really. And that actually lasted quite a while, believe it or not, with all the burning debris falling around. And we had a turntable ladder in that burning debris that I was convinced we were going to lose. We couldn't get it out. It was being rained on with burning debris. And so that was the start of my night, really, then. And then it was kind of, right, let's get in touch with the bridgehead. Let's find out what's going on. And let's start to put a bit of structure around this. And I've got people screaming at me about the building falling over. And I was pretty sure, and I was right, that the building wasn't going to fall over. If we stick to the core, understanding, UK building construction, if we stick to the core and coordinate our activities from the core outwards, we're probably going to be all right. But these are the things to look out for. These are the things to include in your briefing, both inside and outside. If we, big bangs, large cracking, that's the sort of stuff that we're going to start worrying about. And it was kind of that whole night, really, of just running in, out, around the building, talking to the eventual incident commander, Andy Rowe, reassuring them that actually we're safe to continue operations. And we had some really serious conversations on the night about how many firefighters are we prepared to lose before we call this a day. Some real heavy stuff that I thought might bite us later on. I thought firefighters, when it came out, would say, is that what you lot talk about? And the answer is actually yes. On a major incident on that scale, actually, they're the things that need to be considered. And so we were having these huge conversations, and we got a dangerous structure engineer to come, who's a borough surveyor, actually came along first of all. And they were telling me it's okay. He said, we've got 2 hours fire protection in that building. And I'm saying, well, it's been burning for 3 hours. And, I've got 50 people in there. And he said to me, well, where are you thinking of putting these people? I said, they're already in there. I've got 50 people in that building. And he just put his head in his hands and just started shouting, no. And we just lost him. Then I got his boss on the phone, who was driving in. Again, very calm. Yeah, there's nothing to worry about. There's 2 hours fire protection in that building, no problem. And again, when he turned up, It just the ferocity, intensity of that fire. It just threw all of their planning assumptions out. And so
they thought the building was going to come down.
They were worried. They didn't think the building was going. They didn't give us an indication the building was going to come down. That we exposed something a bit later when we did the body recovery. But on the night, they were just not prepared for all of the fire prevention measures that they were aware of to fail, and that's what had happened.
That's it, isn't it?
And then as the wind drove the fire around all sides, we were a bit scuppered really. We had a team up on the flat roof of this hard cover, using a monitor to try and protect someone that was waving a towel out the window. And it was at that time, one of the times I went up there, I kept pulling them back because they were just getting closer and closer with all this debris coming down on them. And I pulled them back, and actually one of the victims jumped from the tower and landed next to where we were on this walkway area. And the team there pulled him out and tried to resuscitate him. And my concern was that his family would follow. If you see your dad go out, my concern was someone's going to follow. And I kind of hugged these buildings till I got as far as I could round to the sort of side of the building. And as I stepped out and looked up, a bit of debris, we went and measured it, 7-foot bit of debris, burning debris, came down and almost, I don't know, it didn't take my nose off. It was that close to me. And I stepped literally, 10 centimetres forward, I'd be dead. And that crashed down at my feet. I've heard the crew shout, and then I've gone back into the cover of the buildings and come around again. And I went, fuck me, that was close. And they just were like, wow, we thought you were dead. And I've got senior safety written on my back, so stick with me, everyone. So having had those couple of experiences, was tuning us into the moment. And yeah, I mean, it's well known. The whole fire thing's well known. I was there till about 11 o'clock the next morning, getting relieved. And then that night, midnight, I got a phone call from my mate in disaster victim identification, who we do a lot of training with USAR and ISAR, saying, Dave, I'm coming down there. Can you meet me there at 7 a.m? Then the DEP phoned me up, Deputy Commissioner, saying roughly the same thing. Dave, can you meet us at 7 a.m. To help us with the kind of help DVI? So we went back there the next morning. It's still burning. I hadn't been away that long, Now I'm in a different mindset. I'm in a different phase. I'm no longer a firefighter. I'm now USAR. So we started our assessment of the building from top to bottom, which we did a few times. They were looking for bodies, and I was looking at the integrity of the building. And bear in mind, the intensity of the fire, concrete construction, you had so much deformation of ceilings, floors, columns. It was quite a lot to take in, really. We're photographing stuff on the way down. Had a few scares where fires ignited again beneath us, and we had to get the police officers through it. But there started then this great big body recovery operation that we were going to be fully involved in until it was over. And again, another privileged position to be in, that actually we could do something to help, right? This was still a fire thing. And I don't think enough has been made of it. And I think the story will come out now the inquiry's coming to an end. But it's one thing being in a fire where your adrenaline's flowing, you're there, as you say, for 4 or longer hours. It's a very different thing. Slow time, going back day after day to a horrendous site, which is very much what we do in ISAR, knowing what to expect and having that slow time exposure to the horrors of whatever the disaster is. So we knew that, and that's what we trained for. And I really think the training we do for USAR, for mass fatalities, and for ISAR helped us mentally to deal with that incident. When you look at the impact it had on USAR technicians compared to firefighters, that's where you notice the difference. So we were in that groove. We'd always trained for mass fatalities. The difference being some of these people that came back on their recall were at the fire, and that was something that we had to treat with some caution, really. But there started a kind of 2 weeks of full-on support to disaster victim identification teams, giving them localised building stabilisation whilst they did a forensic recovery of the deceased. We then again explained to the other services how we can assist. And again, the power of having those working relationships and that kind of seamless start to work with the DVI teams just pays dividends. Again, your relationship's already there. We'd worked with DVI teams at the Croydon tram crash not too long before Grenfell. We trained with them multiple times on the USAR 36-hour exercises. And so just having those relationships there and just walking straight into it, we know each other, we know each other's capabilities. I think it surprised some of the other people that were not USAR competent, that how quickly we could react. So that was great. Securing an area for our equipment, knowing that we're there for the kind of long haul was great. And then starting that assessment process, looking at the damage to the building and kind of identifying the victims as we went down. And as you can imagine, some terrible sights really, from the top of the building down to almost to the bottom. And having that forensic mindset of all the training we've done with DVI and that respect for the victims of that fire and doing our part to make sure that they had a dignified recovery was kind of already there in the minds of our people. And that was strong. We invited Kent, because they're part of our region, to come and assist us. So we had a regional response to the operation. And it was all of that training, that we'd done, it kind of kicked in again. And so that slow, methodical support to the police services, turning people over. It was extremely hot. It was an extremely hot summer. You're in a baking hot building, so we're wearing people out. We're wearing respiratory protection. We're putting shoring in to stabilise the areas that the police are working in to provide them with some reassurance around their activities, and then actually physically assisting with the recovery day after day. I was really, again, I keep saying this word privilege, but that's how I feel. I just was really proud to be a part of that. So it wasn't just the fire, then we go home. Actually, the fact that the service was there for the long haul. And we went back again 3 months later and assisted with kind of some of the rubble removal, the fine debris removal. So we were a part of the whole operation. And that story hasn't come out. It hasn't come out fully. It will, but it hasn't yet. But again, the heroism of our crews by stepping up to the plate, having some of them already been at the fire and had some horrendous experiences, personal experiences at the fire, to then volunteer to come back and assist with the recovery operation was absolutely commendable.
If you're a regular listener to the podcast, then chances are you are big into your own personal development and the development of firefighters around you. So I wanted to remind you of our mobile app Drill Book. This is a free training and development resources made by firefighters for firefighters. Heading on to Drill Book, you will find incident debriefs, radio messages, knots and lines, quick reference guides, quizzes every single day. We've got useful links to the ERG, to Web Rescue, to JESSIP, Euro Rescue, 10-second triage, National Operational Guidance, and not to mention our daily quizzes where you will find questions on extrication, casualty handling, breathing apparatus, fire development, water rescue, rope rescue, you name it. It is the go-to resource if you've got a spare 5 minutes on the firehouse to develop yourself and those around you. Not only that, if you're looking to get into the fire service, we've got advice on there on interview questions, interview answers. You can build your own questioning in there. And again, remember, this is built by firefighters for firefighters, so you can add your own drills in there. You can pick the drills that you find the most favorite. There is literally hundreds of training ideas, hundreds of drills in there. Remember, this app is absolutely free and it grows every single day down to the contributions of our thousands and thousands of users. It's freely available on Android, Apple, and you will find it in the links for this podcast. Remember, it's called personal development. The clue's in the name. You've got to work twice as hard on yourself as you do on the job. So always be growing, always be developing. Now let's get back to the show. I think it's incredible how much people don't realise the multifaceted roles that, again, the fire and rescue service play. I think that's one way in which we probably fail ourselves in advertising fully what we do. And I don't know if it's we're worried about committing professional suicide, we're worried about getting told off for saying the wrong thing. But the flip side of that is we fail to champion ourselves sometimes. We fail to celebrate each other because we really do some absolutely... We are getting better at it, again, with recognition from the government, with, there's a number of awards ceremonies that happen across the fire and rescue services. It's not just about patting each other on the back and stuff like that, but the jobs and the roles can be very hard at times. So it's important, as you've articulated really well there, to recognise the boys and girls that work with us and for us, and the many ways in which they step up beyond their professional obligation, because, as you sort of say, it's both a privilege and an honour to have a set of skills that can be useful to society and to a wider need when these terrible things do happen.
And it's reassuring. And, the criticism that we came under for our response to the incident, and I know the inquiry was very much focused on the fire.
Really frustrating, wasn't it? Because they said, we're just going to cover that bit in the first part of the inquiry. But then that became the narrative for all of it, was the frustration. If you'd have started it differently, which really you should, because let's talk about the building, how it was before the thing happened.
Yeah, well,
that would actually be the logical thought process for me. Because even like when we do a normal debrief, we'll talk about, all right, well, this was Pete's house. Pete lives in this area of the UK. It's a standard building, 2 floors, blah, blah. And you talk about the building as it was, and then there was a fire. How do we think it started? It started with our response, and that became the narrative. And very, very horrible to watch the inquiry and the number of officers that were called upon to give evidence. We were set up to fail in terms of the unrealistic, there'd been so many societal and structural failures leading up to that point. It was an impossible calculation to try and solve when we arrived, in my personal opinion.
And mine, and the... Even having given evidence at the inquiry, it's very pointed. So you think there's an opportunity here to get some good messaging across, and you're absolutely hamstrung on exposing specific detail that's kind of no matter how much preparation you do, it's never on your radar really. To think, why are they asking these questions? And it's just to tease out a fact or an error or something, I mean, one of the things the final question I was asked was, why hadn't we put hose ramps over the hose to protect it going into the dry rising main? Right. And this is under a 4-foot debris field, right? With raining debris on our heads. I think they did well just to get into the dry rising main. And when the first lines were severed, they did well to replace them, really. And we all know that,
Yeah, and you go, well, we carry 4 on each appliance, so we weren't going to cover the entire span of God knows how many lengths of hose anyway. So it's like firing a potato gun at a train. That wouldn't really... So yeah, but aren't they designed to protect the hose, though, Mr. O'Neill? Would they not have provided that protect? And you're like, I know the angle you're looking for here, but this is a ridiculous line of questioning.
As you know in your own policy, and you say, well, do you know what? I actually couldn't see the hose because it was buried in 4 foot of debris. So a tricky one, really. But, another lesson there. But, I think we did some good. I think as a service, we did some good. The story will get told because we didn't just walk away from that incident. We were there till the very, very end. And it was... Any of these multi-agency operations are rewarding because you get to see, it broadens your experience. You get to see a much bigger picture, dealing with media, all of that good stuff, really. And dealing with crews, you know, who were absolutely traumatised by what they were doing. And we've done, you know, I'm a big advocate for trauma risk management and this TRIM training that we use in ISAR. And we've used it on all of our deployments and some of our capacity building projects. But we used it for the body recovery at Grenfell as well, getting the team in to actually discuss individual accounts and, you know, what was bothering individuals. And it never fails to surprise me when you're a team leader or whatever, and you see something through your eyes with your emotional state at the time, you know, whether that be strong, weak, whatever, you know, and no other person sees it in the same way. You know, every team member has their own personal experience based on their emotional bank at the time, their previous experience, whatever's going on in their life, and doing that trim stuff has every time without fail has kind of surprised me. When you hear someone's account and you go, I had no idea of that happened. We did it. Turkey was a great example of that. Nepal was, and some of these major incidents have been, and that's the value in getting people round, and our team now are absolutely expecting trim to follow an incident or a deployment. So the stigma for us, if there was one, has gone. You know, it being good to talk, everyone just expects it now. And that's the culture I wanted to change. That's what I wanted to bring in. And I want it to spread wider in the fire service. And someone's working on that still for us. But it's been a success, actually, I think, for ISAR and certainly for the London team, is that mental resilience we spoke about earlier, but that robustness and that being able to be vulnerable and actually share your feelings as well in a secure environment, I think helps. You know, it all adds to this positivity, the team to be in. You know,
I think it's been an incredible way that the services have stepped in to look after those people post Grenfell, and I think our awareness around things like TRIM, mental health. I don't think we're perfect. I think we have still a very long path to go on this, but there's never been more of an appetite than there is now to ensure we are looking after that entire person, not just from a physical, you're not injured, let's crack on approach to it. You're obviously retired now. You recently retired from the UK Fire and Rescue Service. Talk to me about those closing couple of years. Talk to me about realising that this would come to an end, that retirement's a very, very, very difficult. It's like getting off a moving train, you know, not falling in the gap, knowing there's something beyond what you're doing now, realising you're more than just the thing you do. It can be a very, very difficult time, especially, again, from a mental health perspective. The fire service, as you've referenced a few times during our conversation today, is something so closely identifiable for people. They make it such a huge part of their personality and who they are and what they do. How did you find that experience? What did you think about coming up to it, navigating through it, and still, you know, doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, it's not one, isn't it? Because everyone tells you when you join that your career's going to go in a flash, you know, and you don't believe them or whatever, you know. But there's even you know, 28 years in or whatever, you know, it still seems a long way off, this retirement thing, you know. And then there's this ground rush. If you've done any parachuting, you know what I mean by ground rush. You think you got forever, then all of a sudden, bang, you know, you're on the ground. And that was the feeling I had. I had the privilege of leading the team out to Turkey before I retired, and I couldn't have asked for anything better, really, you know, because that was a successful rescue mission for UK ISAR. I got to a point in my career where I'd kind of done everything that I wanted to do, pretty much, you know, more. I'd overachieved my own ambitions. So I knew it was a good time for me to leave, because there was nothing to hang on for. You know, I'd done my time. We had this whole issue with a pension and all of that sort of stuff, you know. So I thought, here's my opportunity to go. It's the right time. It's the time to go. This is my time to go. And it's I think the whole pandemic stuff and the way we were working at headquarters in London, we kind of lost that real tight-knit team stuff. There was still a lot of working from home going on. There was not the buzz around the place that we were used to for so long, and that was probably good for preparing us a little bit for that extraction from the team. Okay. So yeah, I was ready for it. I was ready to go. It came around really quickly. I did, I celebrated it in the way I wanted to celebrate it, and I had something to focus on. I had something to go to. I had the institute to focus on, and I'm also the chairman of Fire Aid, the charity that that moves.
That's a massive thing in itself.
So that, moving our redundant fire equipment all around the world. It's been able. It's kept me in touch.
Such a fulfilling thing to be part of. That is, Albert.
But it keeps that link. It keeps that link back to the service. So I haven't just stepped away, I haven't stepped into a void. So that was kind of planned, really. I was doing some stuff with the Institute, since we started it back in 2013. And whilst my role was not as full on as it is now, it was all part of the building blocks, knowing that that's where I was going when I came out. So it's great to have that link back to the services, and fire particularly. So the transition for me was still unusual. I couldn't really settle up until Christmas. I was all over the place, really, just doing bits and pieces here and there. No routine, and I like a routine. Most of us like a routine, and it's only this new year, really, since we got over Christmas, that I've got myself into a nice routine now. I'm getting my diary populated. I'm getting back into my new routine, and that's great. That's great for me personally. I still get phone calls from people in the fire brigade. Can you remember when we did this? Where's that? Where can I find this? Can I run something past you? I know you've retired, but I don't mind that. My phone's on. It's fine. I've got no problem with that. But there has to be some point where you go, don't call me anymore. But
that's got to be so weird.
I mean, it's nice to be able, when you've handed stuff over to others. It's nice to be able to hear that it's being completed. It's going to go through that sort of stuff. So now my focus is the Institute. It's going great guns. We've got a broad membership, global membership across 5 continents. We had another successful conference this year. We are, I said to you outside of the meeting, my personal driver really for developing the Institute was to give opportunities to my old colleagues who aren't particularly interested in promotion, don't particularly, love their job and are really, really good at their job. And there's very little reward for them in the fire service, in my fire service. We can't give them an extra day's leave, for never going sick or whatever it is. They are treated, pretty much the same as anyone. But we've got colleagues that we both of us will know, particularly in ISAR, because that's the type of person it attracts, who are absolutely at the top of their game and get little reward. We're not paid for ISAR. That's all done. That's all done voluntarily. That's done above and beyond being really, really good at their day job. And by having, providing a kind of a conduit for the CPD, and then trying to persuade the organisation to either fund people to join or fund their exams, was a way in which we can develop my old mates to be a better person, and not to just do kind of exams or whatever on a subject they're familiar with, but to do that continued professional development and learn a new subject that we know is going to come back and be helpful one day. If you're learning about missing person behaviours, the service and the public will benefit from that one day. So it's an absolute investment. So, and then being able to utilise our membership base to deliver more capacity building training.
Talk to me more about that, because there's a few avenues to how the Institute both adds value to services, first responders, fire and rescue service, specialisms in the USAR role, but then the work that it does through things like capacity building. Help us understand how that works with the memberships and how the organisation helps.
So the Institute, as a members' organisation, we provide professional accreditation for our members. So quite often in the fire service and other services, and we're really keen that the Institute's not seen as fire-centric. It's as much to do with the police and volunteer lowland search and rescue people, etc. And we always seem to fall slightly short of a formal qualification. So we kind of build these fire service qualifications that mean nothing outside. But we're kind of in a world of LinkedIn and stuff where post nominals are going crazy. It actually gives us an opportunity to independently accredit someone who's joining, to recognise their qualifications and experience and appoint them to a grade that they will either use or not use, but at least it's some sort of accreditation, recognition of what they've achieved. And they get access to, online learning, whatever. But also, by being a member, you'll have these certain skill sets. So when we're approached to do training or capacity building, we can draw upon the membership and the specific skills that we've got. And it's a real rich choice we've got of skills and experience to then pass that on and continue to pass it on to others that need it. So we're doing a lot of work with the Royal Marines at the moment for preparing them their response to disaster zones. So we're passing a lot of the civilian skills to the military. We've been approached by governments to do similar stuff that we've had relationships and experience with before, to pass on our skills, and again, that brings its own reward. It brings a financial reward to the members that are doing it, but it's that experience of, why should I join this? Well, it gives you, if you've got the right skill set, that opportunity.
Yeah. Mate, I think it's incredible what you guys and girls do. And I also think it's a wonderful opportunity, as you say, not just from the fire and rescue service, but for people who have developed a lifelong set of experience and skills to find a place to deploy that, because it's of tremendous value if you can just find the right slot in the world, in the needs of the corporate world and globally, the things that the challenges they're facing. Find a place to deploy that, because I think that's where we spoke about that, getting off a moving train. If you can't find a place where these things are useful and you can continue to have a purpose, I think people without a purpose are in a very, very dangerous spot, because realistically, certainly people from your generation when you joined, retiring very early, not as in earlier than they should do, but how old are you now? 50?
52, yeah.
52.
Yeah.
So the average male in the UK dies at 80 something. And I think that's just stretching more and more. People just seem to be living older and older. So you've got, you're just over halfway. You've got another 30, 40 years, hopefully, to still be having all these professional adventures. And you've got all your faculties, everything works. Really, you're at the tip of the spear. It just so happens that the way we've designed our span of our careers mean that it makes most sense for people to financially, in their own personal circumstances, to go and have those other adventures in other areas of the sector. And it's great to see people such as yourself not only embracing that, but not just building your own kind of fortress. Do you know what I mean? This is something that I can see so many other people getting involved with and getting so much value from. We're going to stick some links into the bottom of this for people to go over and take a look at it. So there'll be a link in there for the Institute of Search and Technical Rescue, and also the work that you do with Fire Aid. So Fire Aid's done a lot across the nations. People will see a lot of the work they did, taking stuff over to Ukraine as well. Give us, before we close, a little bit of an understanding about Fire Aid and if people want to get involved in that.
So Fire Aid is a kind of umbrella, really, for a lot of smaller charities and project teams to recycle redundant fire and rescue equipment around the world. And we've got a lot of small services and charities that have built real relations all around the world. And it starts off with just one appliance, one vehicle, maybe some breathing apparatus. And then I think we started getting involved in the support to the Ukraine and working with the Home Office, the National Fire Chiefs Council and the Fire Industry Association, by coming together really and doing it en masse, doing it as a whole service rather than just pockets of someone being able to get hold of, a vehicle or some breathing apparatus. Actually, all services being encouraged to support overseas operations. And whilst the focus has been very much on Ukraine, it hasn't stopped the other projects you spoke about, Nepal, Ghana, Maldives, so there's a lot of these small projects going on. The relationship with one of our members was already with Ukraine, and unfortunately for them, they were kind of like, thanks for that. I know you've been doing this for 10 years, but kind of we're here now and we're going big. Let's just say they became a victim of their own success, and that could happen anywhere in the world. But it continues to support small charities and project teams just to doing what they do best. It's what we've spoken about all day, sharing their knowledge, experience and skills. So, we're just getting a whole load of breathing apparatus coming our way from London Fire Brigade's refresh and West Midlands refresh. So,
wow.
And that's a lot of kit, and we can support a lot of different teams with that. So there's some really exciting projects coming up, and we've got some good support now. We've got the Home Office now. We're talking to them about actually changing policy, UK Fire Service policy, with regard to redundant equipment or supporting fire aid. And it's not just equipment. We need support in admin support. We need storage areas. There's lots of ways that services and people can support.
You almost want it to be an opt-out mechanism, don't you? Whereby the assumption for all fire and rescue services is that redundant equipment will go to this, rather than trying to create the relationships and keep chasing, beg, borrow, steal, ask questions, know someone somewhere, as the way, in my historical knowledge, is the way fire aid was able to get a hold of a lot of the stuff that they did.
True.
You almost want it to be the default, don't you? That rather than this stuff getting thrown away and ending up in someone's garage, there's people around the world that could really benefit from that.
Yeah, and it's a fine line, isn't it? Because, some services need to recover the residual value of equipment and reinvest it. Right, so we get that, right? So they can't just all give fire engines away when there's a residual value. So we understand that, and nor do we want people to be pressured into donating something, because our first Ukraine convoy, a pallet of black officer trousers turned up as a donation. Not what they're screaming out for at the minute out in Ukraine. But someone's store got cleared, and broken ladders and all this sort of stuff. So we ended up actually having to buy, pay for a skip to get rid of all this broken kit that was dumped down there. But so it's a fine line, because you've got to marry up with the equipment with a project, haven't you? So that's things like thermal image cameras, they're pretty popular. PPE is quite popular. Black officer trousers and shoes, not so much called for. But someone felt
there's a reason you couldn't get rid of them.
Someone felt a warm tummy feeling that they'd done their bit anyway. But so we got
Love it.
We got a bit of a fundraiser on the 21st of March at the House of Lords. Lord Stoddart of Stockport is hosting us, and it's another way of spreading the message, getting some sponsors in, and getting out on the media there what the good work is at Fire Aid.
Well, look, mate, I think it's an incredible thing that you're part of. I really, really appreciate you taking, this has probably been close to 3 hours worth of your time this morning. I just think it's such a valuable thing, because one of the overarching principles of the podcast is that through joining the fire and rescue service, hearing some of the great conversations, then joining different teams, joining USAR, and then finally getting into something like ISAR, those chats around the mess tables, the chats around the bonfires, hearing some of these incredible stories, the latter frustration of me was that, God, how many people are ever actually going to get a chance to sit down and speak to Dave, as an example, and hear some of the stories and hear some of the adventures? And I feel like through the generosity of your time, people will be able to learn these lessons. And again, we're not pretending you've done everything perfect. You've made a myriad of mistakes and lessons learned through your own career, but there's so much great stuff there that I think people will take a lot from. So thanks so much for your time, mate. I really do appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Lovely. Thanks very much.
The Firefighters Podcast was created to recognize, acknowledge, inspire, and hopefully even motivate these incredible individuals who have chosen to be part of the first responder community. Our driving purpose is to create a legacy resource for the current and future generations of firefighters and first responders. We get some incredible feedback from listeners and guests, and as the podcast grows, our desire to create longevity and sustainability means we are asking for the support of our listeners. If you want to support the podcast, if you want to get discounts to our merchandise, hoodies, clothing, coins, patches, tallies, and also access to all of the incredible documents get shared with us from our podcast guests and sector leaders, then please head over to our Patreon page, and for just £3 a month, you can support the future of the podcast. Please finally hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on the platform you're listening, and wherever you are in the world, please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.